10 years into the future, the Federation Kingdom falls apart. Powerful figures emerge amid chaos. The 5 great sins strike. A blinding light erupts. Wah! Everything falls into ruin. He works to change destiny. The black-haired man becomes the patron to 5 mysterious children, including a white-haired girl and a blonde beast girl, though he wonders where this path will lead. Sitting at his desk, the black-haired man worries that his intervention has already spiraled into something much larger than he ever intended. A former overworked office worker explains how he found himself reborn as a high-ranking noble within a fantasy realm. Despite his high status, the black-haired man realizes he is illiterate in this world and lacks any of the special abilities common to heroes. A massive, glittering feast awaits. After a satisfying meal, the black-haired boy is complimented on his appetite before the maid offers to help him prepare for his evening bath. The young noble looks startled as multiple maids begin massaging him during his bath. He revels in the luxury of his new life, though he admits to himself that he still has no idea where he actually is. The maid informs him that the young masters are returning tomorrow and urges him to rest, prompting him to realize he has no idea who they are. Learning his family name is Padio, the black-haired man repeats the name in shock, feeling a sudden and ominous sense of dread. He panics in the water as he realizes he has been transported into the world of the dark fantasy game Psychedelia. He remembers playing the game.
In the game's lore, he recalls 5 figures known as the Great Sins, including wrath and greed, who eventually bring about total destruction.
He remembers how the villains Sloth, Pride, and Obsession complete the group destined to bring about the end of the world.
His new family, the Palacio House, is infamous for crime and is destined to be the very first group destroyed when the sins appear. The black-haired man falls to his knees in despair, fully recognizing the dangerous and doomed location he now inhabits. He stands before the massive Palladio estate, lamenting the difficult and dark quest lines associated with his new home. He identifies himself as Alan Palladio, an extra villain and the 3rd son of the house who is destined for a quick ruin.
Alan lies stiffly in bed, desperately wishing he could return to his former life as an overworked wage slave rather than face his coming execution.
He cries over his fate, realizing that a life of luxury is meaningless if he is scheduled to die in 10 years. He laments being trapped in a body with 0 powers, while other characters in this world enjoy extraordinary gifts.
Alan sits up with a new perspective, realizing that his knowledge of the future gives him the unique advantage of a prophet.
He decides to take action. Alan resolves to reform the future villains while they are still children to ensure they never become monsters, securing his own peaceful survival. 2 months pass as Alan oversees the rescue of orphans from a horrific human testing facility disguised as an orphanage. His loyal knight, the brown-haired man with an eye patch named Evan, reports that they have left the orphanage's management to a girl named Utia.
Alan praises Evan's skills, though his own expression remains stoic and difficult for the knight to interpret.
Evan feels unsure if he was actually complimented because Alan's facial expression remains entirely blank. Alan attempts a forced, unsettling smile while expressing his desire to keep working closely with his knight. Alone in his room, Alan struggles with his reflection, noting that his facial muscles don't seem to reflect his internal feelings at all. He considers himself lucky to have hired Evan, a character known for remaining loyal even in a world defined by constant betrayals. Evan questions the true motivation behind saving Utia, and Alan simply confirms that the decision was necessary. Drawing on his long experience as a mercenary, Evan notes that even to him, Utia was clearly no ordinary child. Evan recalls finding several children, including a long-haired girl, locked away behind iron bars in the dungeon. He wondered why the white-haired girl, who possessed immense latent strength, simply allowed herself to remain locked up. Evan suggests it would have been more beneficial to bring the girl to the estate, and Alan agrees that his observation is correct.
Alan knows the white-haired girl is destined to sign a contract with an otherworldly being and become the monstrous Sin of Wrath.
He feels a sense of triumph, believing that by providing her with a peaceful childhood, he has successfully neutralized a major threat.
Alan searches for a believable excuse to explain his mysterious actions to his confused knight. He cryptically tells Evan that it simply isn't the right time yet, leaving the knight even more bewildered by his master's intentions.
Alan orders Evan to keep their involvement a secret and to ensure the orphanage is provided with ample funds. He hands Evan a letter intended for Utia, leading the knight to question the importance of the message. Alan explains that he wants to reassure Utia after her trauma, and Evan promises to see that the letter is delivered. Evan rides away on his horse. Alan watches from his window, hoping his letter will reassure Utia. Flashback to game lore, the Archbishop claims his spell will befriend a non-human. The Archbishop attempts to subdue the Sin of Wrath with a sacred chant. Clashing magic and blood splatter illuminate the night under a crimson moon. Transformed into a monster, adult Utia declares it is far too late for intervention. Narrative text explains that in the original game, all attempts to calm her failed. Alan stretches comfortably, deciding to move on to his next target. He contemplates the absurdity of using religious quotes to befriend monsters.
Alan admits that it is difficult to understand the complex thought processes of villains.
Young Utia stands alone, quietly staring at her letter.
Evan observes the girl, noting her lack of emotion and unbelievable mana levels.
The girl asks if Alan sent the letter, catching Evan off guard. Emitting a powerful red aura, the girl demands to know why Alan rejected her.
Evan is stunned as the girl manifests an advanced form of mana.
An intense pressure fills the air as the night trembles before her power. Evan nervously claims it isn't the right time, and the girl accepts his answer. Reading the familiar quote, the girl smiles and feels a secret connection.
The girl declares she understands while her aura sends chills through the air. Under a blood-red moon, young Utia is revealed as the future Bloody Queen. Alan rests in bed, satisfied that he has successfully extended his last man.
The young noble sleeps peacefully tonight. A sudden cascade of books falls on Alan's head in the library.
Evan reports they rescued the second child while Alan searches for clues. Alan asks if the child was treated kindly as Evan describes the rescuer. Tonio, the arrogant second son of the family, enters with a mocking grin.
Tonio insults Alan for being illiterate while pinning him to the floor.
Alan wonders how his original self handled his brother's constant bullying. Trying to avoid conflict, Alan offers to leave the library to his brother.
Tonio cruelly steps on Alan's head, asking if he knows his place.
A cold voice calls the brothers insects and orders them to stop. Leo Palladio, the family's eldest son, orders his brothers to get lost.
Leo insults Tonio's drug habit and demands he leave while Alan crawls away.
Narrative text notes the family's power is greater than Alan initially thought.
The elder brothers are fighting for control of the family's criminal underworld. Alan cowers, terrified of interfering with his dangerous and powerful brothers.
Evan comforts Alan as the boy resolves to play the weakling.
Alan collapses on a couch, and Evan notes the rescued child is unusual.
Alan is physically and mentally exhausted from his complex schemes.
Evan is puzzled how Alan found a secret bioexperiment facility.
The knight observes Alan's struggle to keep his composure after the confrontation.
Alan confirms he sent the second child to the orphanage for safety.
Alan thinks that the rescued child is actually a cataclysmic threat.
Narrative panels describe the Kalian kingdom as the center of the world.
Narrative text reveals the child saved from the market is a game boss.
Deis Makalian is shown imprisoned behind bars with multiple eyes watching him. He became the sin of sloth after enduring extreme abuse in slavery.
Abstract bloody visuals represent the cruelty found within the game's story. Sloth stands over a field of corpses. Alan shivers while drinking tea, recalling Sloth's graphic and terrifying history.
Alan sips his tea while Evan reports that they have successfully sent the second child to the orphanage.
Alan admits that he included some friendly small talk in his latest letter to Utia.
Alan explains that he instructed Utia to care for the slightly sick child he sent her rat.
A young, dark-haired boy stands alone in a silent, shimmering void.
Footsteps sound as someone approaches the boy and tells him that he is broken. A scarred hand twitches as the mysterious voice notes the traces of a dark power on his skin.
Utia gazes at the boy and asks if the black goat was responsible for his state. Utia smiles warmly and offers her congratulations because the great moon has chosen him.
Utia unleashes a swirl of energy and urges the boy to let his full potential be unleashed.
Under the full moon, Utia promises the boy that loyalty to his master will lead to his revenge.
A massive pillar of violet light erupts as the boy's journey for vengeance begins.
Holding her letter, the adult Utia smiles and decides it is time to send her first reply to Alan.
Utia finishes the letter under the moonlight, closing it with a light and casual greeting. The library's peace is shattered by a sudden loud bang as Evan bursts in, shouting about big trouble. Evan sweats as he corrects himself after nearly calling the second young master scum in front of Alan.
Alan looks up from his books with a startled expression, asking his knight what has happened.
Alan stands over Tonio's broken body, shocked that his brother has already met his end. A large group of mourners gathers around a lone coffin during a formal funeral service.
Count Palladio sits between two women and is addressed as my lord as he ignores the ceremony. The Count complains of boredom and hunger while Alan reflects on how messed up his family truly is.
Staring at Tonio's body, Alan realizes this death is a departure from his memories of the game.
Alan recalls a vision of Leo celebrating Tonio's murder to secure his place as the rightful heir.
Leo smiles wickedly behind Alan, who suspects his eldest brother is the true culprit of the crime. Alan stands silently by the coffin and keeps his arms crossed, maintaining his stoic facade.
The mansion remains quiet as the succession problem is solved and Leo absorbs the illegal drug business.
Alan and Evan enjoy a quiet tea service in the sun-drenched parlor.
Alan believes that his ongoing correspondence with Utia will be highly beneficial for his future plans. Alan smiles while reading about the children's hobbies, thinking they are actually good kids. Evan notes that sponsorship for the small orphanage has increased, which Alan considers a good thing.
Evan points to a document and reports that the Information Guild has finally found a crucial clue.
Alan is relieved, believing the clue will lead him to the ancient book regarding the third boss.
The grand tea room remains peaceful as the two men discuss their next move. A sudden, wet splatter sounds as a man screams out in agony under the red moon.
Two guards discuss the generosity of the eldest Palladio as their criminal organization continues to grow. The guards are startled as they are suddenly struck down in the dark street. A man begs for help as he is impaled, while a blonde woman with an eye patch watches coldly. A sharp, quick whoosh sounds as a blade slices through the night air. More guards are brutally dispatched in a flurry of strikes as they cry out in terror. A cloaked figure stands over the bodies and remarks that the puppet show was enjoyable. The figure manipulates violet strings on his fingers, noting there is more to report to his master. The adult Deis asks Utia if there is any point in slaughtering these people. Utia asks if he pities the drug manufacturers while they stand among the fallen guards. Swirling purple energy surrounds the pair as they work to create space for their master's return. Utia smiles and insists that they cannot let the place be shabby for their lord's arrival. A bright pink shockwave of magical energy pulses through the entire city block.
The two figures float high into the night sky, acting entirely according to their master's will.
The Blue Moon organization declares that they shall be the sword of their mysterious master.
A massive crater in the shape of a crescent moon marks the site of the night's destruction.
The scene fades into shadow as debris falls through the dark and empty air.
The Palladio mansion stands tall and undisturbed under a bright, clear morning sky. A long, weary breath sounds as Evan returns and collapses onto the grass.
Evan gives a thumbs up while reporting the fifth child's successful rescue.
Alan crouches down to offer a slice of cake to his grumbling knight.
Evan demonstrates his agility while catching macarons midair during a training session. Alan dismisses his knight for rest after confirming orphanage duties are finished.
Sitting together on the lawn, Evan questions if his young master is truly happy.
Alan insists he is smiling despite his neutral and weary expression.
Alan lies back on the grass and reflects on how well his plans are progressing.
Violent images recall the torture the future sins endured in their original timeline.
Narrative text explains the low chances of saving the children from their horrific pasts. Silhouettes of the 5 rescued children stand before the orphanage building. Evan hands over a letter while confirming that things at the orphanage are going well.
Flashback panels show the children transforming from broken dolls into happy, playing kids. Alan wonders if Utia's background has made her particularly sentimental toward the orphanage.
Alan notes that Utia is quite nice while Evan asks if the letter contains important information.
A floating letter reveals that the children are growing up healthy and happy. The children enjoy a bright, flowery day at the orphanage together. Alan tells his knight that the right environment is the most important factor for growth. Evan asks when the master plans to meet the children in person. Alan admits that he never plans on meeting the children he saved. Shards of glass depict the terrifying and monstrous versions of the sins from the game. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Alan admits he is still terrified of their potential power.
Alan eventually suggests they could perhaps meet in 5 years.
Alan practices magic in the garden to ensure he can protect himself.
Evan asks if the master has heard of a new group called the Blue Moon.
Evan explains the organization has recently become famous for hunting down criminal rings.
Alan likes the idea of cleaning up trash but assumes the group will vanish soon. The knight mockingly sticks out his tongue while noting the group even kills nobles.
Alan orders his knight to sleep next to his room for added security.
The mansion stands quiet and illuminated under the deep blue night sky.
Adult Utia looks up curiously and asks about the status of the North. A young blonde cat girl rubs her eye while beginning her report. Solrong grins proudly after taking the heads of all the slave traders.
The blonde girl laughs about killing the traders who couldn't identify her eye color. Rin reports that the corpses were melted while clutching a book.
The green-haired girl confirms that she has finished operations in the south as well.
Deis laughs while reporting the destruction of illegal human testing grounds. The white-haired boy smiles wickedly while describing how he slaughtered the Avalon organization.
A thought bubble declares that everything will go according to his will. The servants of the Great Moon declare their reason for existence.
The Blue Moon organization stands united under the leadership of the red-eyed woman. Utia notes that a problem has appeared despite their perfect progress.
Deis presents a dangerous written order he found while cleaning up the southern gangs. Utia stares in shock as she reads the contents of the secret document. The group stands together in the dark room as they process the news.
The document reveals a plot to poison the sun after the Count's death.
Utia's eyes glow with intense rage as she prepares to respond to the threat.
2 years later, a formal funeral is held for the deceased Count Palladio.
The Count lies in state after his death was publicly attributed to heart failure.
Alan suspects his father died of an overdose while rumors of the Blue Moon spread. Leo and Alan discuss a recent massacre while the eldest brother confirms the targets were eliminated. Leo's internal monologue reveals his growing concern over the Blue Moon's increasing caution. The Count's funeral concludes in an atmosphere of utter indifference as Alan and Evan leave the hall.
Leo watches Alan's departure from the ceremony with a cold and calculating stare.
Evan is shocked when Alan begins packing to leave the estate permanently to avoid the succession battle.
Alan reveals his plan to run away and live a quiet life far from the family drama.
Alan names the southern town of Rodmill as their new destination for a peaceful retirement.
The carriage departs the estate under the warm glow of the setting sun. A soft, quick swoosh sounds as Leo watches Alan's carriage disappear into the distance from his balcony.
A quick hot sizzle sounds as an egg and bread cook in a pan for breakfast.
Alan expertly flips French toast while enjoying his newfound freedom in the kitchen. 3 days later, Alan and Evan settle into their quiet life in the southern villa.
Alan is horrified and confused to find himself back at the manor for his brother's unexpected funeral. A deep, heavy sigh sounds as Alan realizes the timeline of his brother's death has drastically shifted. Alan observes that Tonio was killed by a precise stab to Bahat. Looking at the coffin, Alan questions who could have managed to kill his brother. A sharp, terrified shriek sounds as a servant recoils in extreme fear when Alan addresses him.
Alan is baffled by the pervasive fear and panic the estate staff shows toward him. Evan rushes through the fearful crowd to reach Alan's side.
Alan asks if his knight has uncovered any information regarding the recent tragedy. Evan whispers that the killer is linked to the organization that destroyed Avalon overnight. The staff continues to scramble away in terror as Alan reflects on the mysterious assassin. A soft, rhythmic trot sounds as Alan's carriage traveled toward Rodmill in a flashback. Alan had insisted that Rodmill was his ultimate destination to escape the original game plot. Narrated text explains Alan's secret mission to save the future sins from their horrific fates. A cheerful, bright laugh sounds as the rescued children enjoy a peaceful picnic in the woods. Alan notes that Rodmill is the perfect location for a life disconnected from the main story. Alan dreams of living as a lazy noble while doing absolutely nothing for the rest of his days. Evan mocks Alan's serious expression, knowing his master just wants to avoid being bothered. A quick, faint swoosh sounds as Leo debates whether to kill Alan before he reaches the border. Leo reveals his original plan to eventually poison Alan after their father's death. Hearing that Alan is leaving for the border quietly, Leo decides he no longer needs to kill him.
A light, rhythmic top sounds as Leo considers the failure of the Avalon organization's operations.
A quick, soft top sounds as Leo admits that Alan's simple existence is what truly bothers him.
Leo commands his subordinate, Almond, to follow the departing carriage. Almond asks for clarification on whether he should kill the target, confirming his role as an assassin. A sharp, heavy breath sounds as Leo gets irritated by his subordinate's sudden questioning. A sudden, wet splatter sounds as Leo is unexpectedly impaled through the chest from behind.
The assassin reveals his true identity as Redan, a loyal member of the Blue Moon organization.
Narrated text explains that the Blue Moon moves according to the creed of the Red Moon. Hyden's eyes glow with intensity as he recalls his oath to eliminate anyone who harms his master. A sudden, sharp slice sounds as Hyden delivers a fatal finishing blow to Leo. Hyden mocks Leo for taking 2 years to finally reveal his intent to murder Alan.
A quick, dull thud sounds as Redan discards Leo's body from the high balcony.
A light, quick top sounds as Redan watches the corpse fall, declaring that his master gave him a chance.
Alan wakes up with a bright yawn, declaring his life in Rodmill to be absolute heaven. Alan stretches comfortably in bed, grateful for a peaceful day with no responsibilities.
A slow, happy chew sounds as Alan praises his own cooking while eating toast.
Evan bursts into the room with a letter, interrupting Alan's quiet morning meal.
Alan's peaceful retirement ends after only 4 days when a formal letter arrives requesting his return following Leo's death.
A heavy, booming sound echoes through the hall as Alan and Evan stand solemnly beside Leo's open coffin.
A sharp, fearful gasp sounds as Alan notices the estate servants cowering away from him in absolute terror. Evan explains the absurdity of the current situation while Alan stands frozen in shock at being labeled a shadow leader. Distressed and tearful, Alan desperately asks his knight to explain why he is suddenly being treated like a villain. Evan points out that Leo's murder and Alan's perfect alibi make him the only person who benefits from the tragedy. While Alan remains frozen in disbelief, Evan notes that the destruction of Avalon and Leo's death removes all his obstacles. Evan dramatically strikes a pose while mocking the idea that Alan is the mastermind who ordered a swordmaster's assassination. A long, weary breath sounds as Alan sits in frustration, wondering how he could possibly begin to fix this mess. A sudden, quick rustle sounds as Alan asks if the Blue Moon organization could be responsible for the recent killings. Shaking his head, Evan reveals that the Information Guild has confirmed the Blue Moon was not involved in the incident. Evan explains that the Blue Moon leaves distinctive marks instead of bodies, whereas the Avalon members were killed by swords. A sharp, cold shiver sounds as Alan realizes his reputation as a ruthless killer has effectively opened a road to hell. Alan reflects on the fact that the Blue Moon shouldn't even exist yet, leaving the identity of the killers a total mystery. Utia stands in the shadows, her hand to her chin as she thoughtfully contemplates their next move. A soft, eerie whistle sounds as Renee confirms that no evidence or traces were left behind at the scene of the slaughter. A quick, sharp swoosh sounds as Solrong enthusiastically swings her blade while confirming that her mission was also a complete success. Grinning wickedly while holding a bloody dagger, the cockerel laughs about the fact that she left nothing but corpses behind. Glowing with a faint purple light, Deis stands amidst spectral wings while reporting the number of remaining Avalon soldiers. A sudden, heavy slice sounds as Redan grins proudly while describing how he effortlessly cut all his enemies in half. Utia's red eyes glow with a terrifying intensity as she declares the progress of their bloody work to be perfect.
Narrated text explains that the entire organization was turned to dust in just 5 days of relentless, secret violence.
Utia questions Redan about the perfection of their cleanup, sensing that something might have been overlooked during the massacre.
Redan presents a document linking the Altia dukedom to Avalon, revealing a hidden web of corruption among the high-ranking nobility.
Staring at the folder in silence, Utia processes the weight of the information regarding the families that targeted her master.
A sharp, crackling sound fills the air as Utia's eyes burn with rage while she prepares to issue a lethal order.
Redan promises to handle the situation quietly while the other children stand ready to strike in the name of the moon.
A soft, happy sip sounds as Alan enjoys a drink on the balcony, unaware of the chaos his followers are causing.
Utia's expression hardens with murderous intent as she reiterates that her subordinates already know what she expects of them.
The children of the Blue Moon stand united in the darkness, their powerful auras radiating a sense of absolute loyalty and danger.
Redan smirks confidently as he grips his massive sword, eager to eliminate the next threat to his master's peace.
A slow, calm exhale sounds as Utia closes her eyes, masking the intense bloodlust she feels toward those who targeted Alan.
Utia questions Renee about the reliability of their information guild to ensure their involvement remains a secret from the master.
A quick paper rustle sounds as Solrang playfully waves a document, while Renee remains focused on her ledger of kills.
Deis levitates several reports with magic while asking if he should continue monitoring the movements of the various noble guilds. A sudden cold snap sounds as Utia warns that news of their unauthorized actions must never reach Alan's ears. Deis notes that since Alan's family attacked first, the response wasn't in order but a necessary act of protection. Looking up with a cold and vacant stare, Deis declares that they are merely swords who must not think for themselves. The crescent moon shines through a window as the children remind themselves that their organization must only follow their master's will.
Utia stares down with glowing red eyes, warning the others that Alan knows everything and they must never disappoint him.
Alan looks on with a bead of sweat, confused as to why a powerful girl like Utia would be so terrified of him.
A soft, quick rustle sounds as Deis clutches the reports, acknowledging his role in the group's secret, violent operations.
The moonlit mansion stands quiet as the group reaffirms their ultimate goal of doing everything for the Great Moon. A faint, weary groan sounds as a voice pleads for an end to the overwhelming burden of responsibility.
A sudden dull thud sounds as Alan collapses onto a desk covered in an endless mountain of paperwork and documents. Exhausted and tearful, Alan laments the fact that his life as a noble has turned into a nightmare of endless administrative duties.
Alan reflects on the fact that Leo's death happened years earlier than expected, ruining his plans for a lazy, peaceful retirement.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as a group of nervous servants arrive with even more stocks of documents for Alan to sign.
Alan wonders why the staff is suddenly working so diligently when they used to be lazy and skip their duties.
The servants cower in extreme fear, assuming Alan is furious because they mistakenly believe he is a cold-blooded mass murderer.
Exhausted, Alan wonders if the staff's newfound diligence is a result of rumors labeling him a secret mastermind.
A sudden, sharp crackle sounds as Alan is addressed by his title while sitting before a roaring fireplace. Evan reflects on the situation, finding it truly remarkable. A rhythmic, low hum sounds as Evan expresses shock that Alan reached the second tier in Poisoncraft in just 2 years of self-study. Evan notes that such progress usually takes twice as long, while Alan humbly accepts the praise for his talent. Alan admits he only practiced so hard because he felt constantly threatened.
A quick, sharp buzz sounds as Alan reflects on the intense mana control required for master-level techniques.
A faint, soft hiss sounds as Alan Master recalls using every type of magic available in this world. A sudden, quick whistle sounds as Alan remembers his initial excitement and his plan to avoid danger through knowledge. A long, heavy exhale sounds as Alan laments that his tiny mana capacity is holding back all his efforts. A system notification illustrates how innate mana capacity acts as a natural limit, similar to an athlete's weight class. Alan stands dejected, realizing that no amount of training can overcome his physical limitations. A light, quick snap sounds as Evan presents an invitation to a ball, interrupting Alan's somber thoughts. Alan looks up with a curious expression, taking interest in the new development. A soft, rhythmic trot sounds as Alan arrives at the social event dressed in fine noble attire. Alan already feels drained by the stifling atmosphere of the high society gathering. Narrated text explains the function of the aristocratic ball as Alan contemplates his upcoming promotion to Count.
Alan decides to use the event for networking, though Evan is more interested in the buffet.
A sharp, cold shiver sounds as the other guests hurriedly clear a path, terrified of the black-haired man.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as a guest flees in terror just from hearing Alan's voice.
A quick, light rustle sounds as the crowd continues to scramble away, leaving the duo alone.
Evan mockingly tells Alan not to be upset, while Alan claims the rejection doesn't bother him. A soft, quick tap sounds as Alan dismisses his knight to handle the social situation alone.
A heavy, booming sound echoes as Alan reflects on the poor reputation of his family and the disdain of the other nobles.
A sudden, light splash sounds as Alan picks up a drink, focused on his hidden objective. Alan is intrigued by the unique aroma of the regional wine while a noblewoman watches him from a distance.
A quick, sharp hum sounds as Alan gives a creepy smile while thinking about how much he enjoys the scent of the drink.
A sudden, sharp breath sounds as the woman is paralyzed with fear by Alan's unintentional death glare. A quick, heavy thud sounds as the woman sprints away, screaming that she will fulfill his demand for the wine immediately. Alan is baffled by the misunderstanding as the other guests whisper about his supposed blackmailing tactics.
A light, happy chuckle sounds as Evan enjoys the chaos while Alan tries to convince himself the girl was just shy.
A slow, steady chew sounds as Evan lists the valuable gifts nobles are preparing for Alan out of fear. A long, weary breath sounds as Alan realizes rumors about him killing his brothers have destroyed his social standing.
A soft, eerie whistle sounds as the guests continue to cluster far away from him.
Alan decides to seek some peace on the balcony while a red-haired woman keeps a watchful eye on him.
The red-haired woman observes Alan with a look of quiet calculation.
A long, low sigh sounds as Alan stands alone in the moonlight, regretting his ruined retirement. A sudden, soft voice sounds as a mysterious individual approaches Alan and asks for a moment of his time. A quick, faint rustle sounds as Alan turns in surprise, shocked that anyone would actually speak to him.
A sudden, dull thud sounds as Alan focuses on the visitor stepping out from the shadows.
Alan is taken aback by the identity of the person standing before him.
A young girl with green eyes and a green dress stands on the balcony looking apprehensive.
A sharp, cold shiver sounds as Alan recognizes her connection to the notorious Altia family.
Narrated text identifies the Altia family as a powerful and dangerous group known as the Northern Troublemakers. Alan realizes that this girl must be far more dangerous than she appears. Alan searches his memory, confused as to why this girl was never mentioned in the original game. The brown-haired girl drops her formalities and desperately asks Alan to lend her his strength. A heavy, booming sound echoes as the girl is dwarfed by Alan's overwhelming and dark presence. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the girl confesses that she is about to be assassinated. Looking up with wide, pleading eyes, the girl reiterates her plea for protection against her impending death. Alan listens as the girl explains she was protected as a mistress's daughter, but her father's health failed and her sisters intend to murder her. A mutual downfall situation unfolds.
Alan realizes her absence from the game means she died early while she continues her plea.
A sudden, sharp breath sounds as Alan rejects her request for help.
Alan turns away as she desperately offers half her family's fortune for survival.
Alan sympathizes but knows he lacks the power rumors suggest and refuses to offer false hope. The girl stands alone in despair. A long, weary sigh sounds as Alan regains his composure.
Alan wishes her luck while departing.
He hopes she finds a reliable ally. Watching from the shadows, a subordinate notes the Altia daughter's approach to the master.
Subordinates discuss intelligence confirming the girl is the only Altia not connected to Avalon.
They decide to follow orders and eliminate the rest of the Altia family while keeping the truth from Alan.
Alan moves through the ballroom, watched by hidden eyes.
Alan wonders why he is avoided until a red-haired woman greets her.
He hopes for a normal social interaction.
Alan recognizes her as a major player from his past gaming knowledge. He suspects anyone approaching him first is likely trouble. The red-haired woman asks if Alan recognizes her. Alan acknowledges her Whispering fame. Lore describes the three great shadow players of the kingdom. The powerful regional troublemakers are listed. Kalia, the eldest daughter of Count Sinonia, questions her own fame. Alan is terrified by her family's criminal nature. Kalia gracefully accepts his acknowledgement. A sudden sharp hum sounds as she proposes a deeper conversation. A sudden sharp gasp sounds as Alan makes a hasty excuse to leave. A light, quick snap sounds as Kalia finds him consistent with his rumors.
Kalia bids him farewell, leaving Alan confused.
She disappears back into the crowd. Alan ponders her mysterious words.
Cloaked figures confirm the containment of local information.
They identify tails following Alan at the ball.
A rhythmic, quick trot sounds as they move to eliminate the threats. Alan and Evan reach a massive canyon. Alan celebrates finding his true objective. He admits the ball was merely a pretext for visiting this labyrinth. The Labyrinth of Whispers map appears. Solving riddles leads to powerful artifacts.
Alan relies on his extensive game knowledge to navigate.
He marvels at the entrances skill.
Evan is baffled by Alan's specific knowledge of the area.
A heavy, booming sound echoes as Alan enters with a sinister grin. A sudden, sharp scream sounds as a monster is crushed. A quick, heavy thud sounds as blood spatters. A sudden, sharp
sounds as Evan reacts to the deadly traps. A heavy, booming sound echoes as puzzles are solved. Alan observes a mysterious glowing feather. Evan reflects on his inability to predict Alan's varied missions over 4 years.
A sudden, sharp scream sounds as Alan successfully triggers a mechanism.
Evan justifies his loyalty to his mysterious master. A long, weary breath sounds as Evan questions Alan's current plan.
Alan struggles with the chamber's grisly reality.
The duo enters a magnificent treasure vault. Alan targets a specific black ring. Evan worries about Alan's strange priorities. Alan celebrates his victory through game knowledge. Stone golems wait inside the canyon.
Evan prepares for a desperate defense.
Alan surprisingly volunteers to take charge. Evan urges a retreat over confrontation. A golem spear begins to glow. The atmosphere grows heavy with mana. Evan fears Alan's magic is insufficient. Alan activates the artifact's hidden power. Mana surges through the black ring.
A massive energy burst consumes the area.
Smoke clears to reveal a Mord. An ancient voice addresses the hero.
The entity demands Alan state his terms.
Alan realizes the voice is sentient. The artifact's true name the Curse. Restrictions are exchanged for forbidden power.
A long, weary breath sounds as Alan begins his first declaration.
Alan vows to perform ancient hand signs. The void asks for his desire. Alan seeks to manipulate world laws. Alan prepares his second binding vow. Alan vows to use specific incantations. Alan demands even more magical strength. Silence falls over the cosmic void. Alan bets everything on his memories. The final restriction is officially granted.
The entity expresses ancient gratitude as Alan questions his inheritance.
The ring merges with Alan's Guy. Evan's warning is cut short mid-battle. The enemy golems surround the duo. Evan fears their magic has failed.
Alan's lightning looks weak in skull.
Alan acknowledges his physical magic limits. He decides to test the gamble. Alan prepares his final magic strike.
He focuses on his heavy sacrifice.
Alan wonders why he still feels the ring as the narrative notes he briefly zoned out. He tests the limits of restriction. The price of power is revealed. Lightning surges violently from his hand. Blinding energy erupts within the canyon. A massive explosion levels the battlefield. A blinding orb of blue light surges with power. On a rocky cliff, Alan and Evan watch as massive pillars of lightning descend into the canyon. Alan's hands blur as he weaves complex magical signs amidst a storm of electricity.
A sharp electric sizzle sounds as Alan narrows his eyes, focusing his absolute control over the raging mana.
A thunderous, ground-shaking boom echoes as a colossus of lightning obliterates the valley below. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Evan stares in disbelief, the reflection of the massive spell dancing in his eye.
Violent arcs of electricity crackle across the air.
A heavy, bone-crunching crack sounds as the stone golems are pulverized by the sheer force of the magic. Amidst the rising smoke, the duo stands over the shattered remains of their enemies. A sudden, sharp explosion sounds as a golem's weapon is vaporized along with its arm.
The stone giants disintegrate into fine rubble under the relentless electrical onslaught.
Sparks and static electricity linger in the scorched air. A low, echoing rumble sounds as the dust settles over the now silent canyon. Evan expresses his total shock and disbelief at the overwhelming display of power. Evan questions if Alan has been hiding his true strength, but Alan dismisses the idea as impossible. Evan is flabbergasted, struggling to believe that such destruction came from a mere second-tier spell after his 15 years of experience. A soft, quick tap sounds as Alan calmly confirms the spell's low rank while Evan remains speechless. Alan is privately perplexed, noting that the spell's power far exceeds its version in the original game. Narrated text explains that in the game's combat system, sigils and incantations provided small stat boosts per turn. Alan's current Chain Lightning spell was vastly improved by stocking 4 incantations and sigils over 5 turns.
Multiple Thunderblades were synthesized, creating a configuration designed for large-scale destruction.
The entity's gratitude reveals that Alan's strict adherence to ancient restrictions amplified his magic severalfold.
Alan admits the result was overkill, while a drained Evan trails behind, relieved to finally escape.
A long, weary breath sounds as Evan collapses in exhaustion, claiming the journey is harder than the fight.
Looking toward a massive dome in the distance, Evan wonders who could have designed such a terrifying place.
Alan remains silent, recalling that the Whispering Labyrinth once held a far more significant name.
A quick, light blink sounds as Evan asks Alan to repeat his quiet mutterings. A soft, rhythmic sway sounds as Alan announces their return to the east, intending to pursue a new goal.
A sudden, sharp sounds as Evan is taken aback by Alan's relentless diligence.
Historical records describe how matching a sigil's element to a spell's nature was fundamental to ancient magic.
Unlike the game's static visuals, each sigil now physically alters the spell's appearance and properties.
Under the moonlit sky, Alan prepares to test his limits once his mana reserves have fully recovered.
A soft, rustling wind sounds as a green-haired girl watches the duo from a high vantage point.
A quick light dash sounds as a figure moves through the trees like a ghost in the night.
The girl studies glowing blue inscriptions on a stone wall, identifying them as script from the Elanafi Empire.
A quick, light rustle sounds as the green-haired girl looks up, her expression filled with quiet intensity.
Ancient text describes how Swordmaster Palion once stood alone to protect a dear friend. A soft, quick slide sounds as the girl gently touches the glowing runes on the weathered stone.
Lore panels depict a legendary battle where a hero repelled the Black Ones and defeated a heart-devouring dragon.
The inscriptions formally acknowledge the legacy of the Radiant Emperor, the Great Palion.
The girl reflects on her origins within the ancient library, where she was born to carry out a great mission.
Alan realizes Palion's influence while the girl notes that the Bloody Queen's presence contradicts historical records.
A sudden, sharp sizzle sounds as the image of a red-haired woman with horns and glowing eyes appears.
Alan stands before a massive statue of a knight, pondering the reverence once held for Palion.
The girl is troubled, realizing that the incantations Alan used are completely absent from her library's records. A soft, mournful sigh sounds as the girl feels ashamed for merely following orders without understanding.
A quick, sharp rustle sounds as the girl turns to address someone who has just arrived in the forest.
A mysterious figure in a dark cloak informs the girl that the man in black has been killed.
A sudden, sharp crack sounds as a vision shows a man's neck being lethally twisted midair. The girl stares into the darkness, deciding to report these strange anomalies for proper handling.
The scene shifts to the Zenonia Count's house, a dark and imposing structure shrouded in vines. Kalia reflects on Alan's chilling, abyssal gaze, feeling the weight of his unfeeling presence from their meeting. Despite her secluded nature, she finds it unsettling that she has become a subject of such intense fame. Standing in her father's study, she questions the strangeness of her sudden renown with a skeptical look.
Her father, busy with his writing, dismisses her concerns as a natural consequence of her high noble status.
A sinister smile plays on Kalia's lips as her eyes glow with a predatory crimson light.
A sudden, sharp swipe sounds as a swirling vortex of dark energy manifests around her true form.
Kalia looms over her father with a triumphant smirk, clearly revealing who holds the actual power. Inner narration reveals that Kalia is the true master of the house while her father serves as a mere puppet. She is deeply troubled, wondering exactly how her secret was exposed to those watching from the shadows.
Kalia notes the presence of many observers, including the detection of a spy she had strategically planted.
A sudden, quick dash sounds as a frantic servant rushes through the hallway toward her.
The breathless man urges Lady Kalia to return to her chambers immediately due to a discovery.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as she discovers the lifeless, blood-stained body of her spy lying on the floor.
They conclude that the secret remains safe since the protective seal on the man was never triggered before death.
Kalia realizes with mounting dread that her primary vulnerability has been compromised from the very start.
Elsewhere, Alan ponders his next move while Evan lies completely exhausted on a nearby sofa. The narrative moves to the Altia ducal territory, showing a carriage navigating the grand and sprawling estate gardens.
Loria contemplates Alan's formidable nature, recognizing that he is an opponent who should never be taken lightly.
She recalls his alias as the noble of the underworld, noting his eyes match her father's coldness and intensity.
Though he was her final hope, she understands why he rejected a deal with such high risks involved.
She remembers how her siblings ruthlessly stripped her of everything, leaving her with absolutely nothing left.
Standing before the massive ducal palace, she reflects on surviving solely through her father's lingering mercy and affection.
A soft, quick creak sounds as a maid welcomes Lady Loria back home with unexpected urgency.
The servants deliver the shocking news that Lady Feline and Lord Kig have suddenly taken their own lives.
Loria is frozen in total disbelief, her eyes wide with shock at the sudden and violent deaths.
She knows their treacherous nature too well to believe they would ever commit suicide out of guilt.
With a trembling voice, she inquires about the fate of her other elder siblings, Tamalian and Marianne.
Horrified cries echo through the palace as the staff discovers yet another grisly scene in the Grand Hall.
Tamalian and Marianne are found dead, their bodies gruesomely impaled together in a terrifying display. A bird soars through the golden sky as a mysterious message about a wider world appears in the light.
A silver-haired girl with red eyes announces that a special directive has been delivered personally to the group.
Alan and his companions receive their letters, including the eye patch-wearing Evan and several other loyal followers.
A soft, quick crinkle sounds as the group members eagerly inspect their new assignments with varying expressions.
Loria stands in the shadows, discovering a cryptic note left behind amidst the tragic crime scene.
A quick, light dash sounds as a dark figure moves with incredible speed across the palace rooftop.
A white-haired man looks down with a cold smile, confirming that his targets have been successfully eliminated.
A sudden, sharp whistle sounds as a powerful gust of wind sweeps over the silent castle grounds.
Loria gasps in terror, finally realizing the terrifying and calculated implication of Alan's previous words.
She perceives him as a patient predator who has finally decided to seize control of the situation. The image of Alan looms in her mind, marking him as the true shadow manipulating the nobility's fate. The full weight of his warning finally sinks in, leaving her trembling with fear and realization. She is overcome with horror, questioning what kind of monstrous entity she has tethered herself to for power. Knowing the fate of those who betray him, she realizes the extreme danger of her current position. Steel fills her eyes as she resolves to continue down the dangerous path she has already chosen.
A rhythmic, soft knock sounds as messengers from Duke Altia arrive at a sunlit manor in the city.
Alan is confused when informed that he has received a special delivery on the Duke's personal orders. Evan is amazed, identifying the gift as an incredibly rare and expensive bottle of vintage Cernox wine. Alan reads the attached card and realizes Loria prepared this gift, feeling a sudden pang of guilt.
He questions the delivery's intent while the messenger confirms it was hand-delivered by order of the Duke.
Alan is stunned to learn that Loria, the youngest, has somehow ascended to the position of Duke of Altia. Loria sits at a desk under the night sky, confirmed by narration to have officially become the new Duke of Altia. A soft, tired breath sounds as Loria stretches at her desk, noting that 2 months have passed in a chaotic blur. Standing in the center of her new office, Loria reflects on the time when she was strictly forbidden from even entering this room. Recalling the gruesome scene of her siblings' deaths, Loria takes satisfaction in having successfully avoided all suspicion from the public. She attributes her safety to her alibi at the ball, even though her own secret organization was completely annihilated by her rivals. Surrounded by blades, Loria remembers the moment she felt she had truly lost everything in her desperate struggle for survival. Horrified by the realization, Loria understands that Alan purposefully manipulated her dire situation to advance his own hidden agenda.
She notes that while Alan dismissed her initial offer with cold indifference, he meticulously handled every subsequent detail with absolute perfection.
Walking through the grand hallway, Loria concludes that Alan only reached out because his master plan required the influence of the Altia territory.
Loria observes that despite her success in unifying the organizations under her command, her strength still pales in comparison to Alan.
She looks at the ducal crest and wonders what more Alan wants from her, specifically pondering his connection to the name Palazzo. Alan is depicted as a powerful underworld tycoon, leaving Loria to question what unique value the name of Altia holds for him. She deduces that Alan seeks the political renown of the Altia family to further solidify his control over the kingdom's affairs. In her mind, Alan appears as a cold manipulator, holding chess pieces over a board to signify his control over the political world. Loria stands alone in a gallery of family portraits, dwarfed by the massive scale of her new responsibilities and heritage. Turning her attention toward the dark night sky, Loria resolves to focus entirely on the immediate tasks required of a duke. Gazing at a portrait, she remains certain that her mysterious noble benefactor will be reaching out to contact her very soon.
Loria's expression remains resolute as she prepares herself for the dangerous partnership she has forged with the noble of the underworld.
A dark-haired man in a formal suit announces his departure while Alan and Evan remain deep in conversation behind the desk. Alan finds it incredibly strange that Loria is now a duke after being under death threats, while Evan watches him with confusion. The scene shifts to an expansive view of the snowy estate gardens, emphasizing the isolation and grandeur of the noble household.
Alan walks through the corridors of his manor, his mind clearly occupied by the shifting political landscape and the unexpected news.
Evan catches up to Alan and asks if he should be called a count now, which Alan admits he can technically use. Alan privately reflects that becoming a count was never part of his plan for a peaceful life of travel and good food. Despite his initial reluctance, Alan admits to himself that he has actually begun to enjoy the various perks that come with nobility. Walking together, Alan asks if there is any news on Leo's assassins, but Evan reports that the Information Guild is still investigating. Evan questions Alan's ultimate goal in this pursuit, asking if his motivation is driven by a simple desire for personal revenge.
Alan wonders if these differences from the game's original plot are butterfly effects he caused, deciding he must be prepared for anything.
Evan chuckles, noting how much Alan has started to sound like a proper noble, while Alan simply goes along with the observation. A soft, quick crinkle sounds as Alan opens a letter, curious to see what new updates he has received this time.
The letter describes the children's lives, showing Utia writing, Deis performing puppet plays, and Sialong playing games with her friends.
The report continues by showing Ryan and Redan working together in the gardens, having developed a genuine interest in the hobby. Alan smiles warmly at the report, feeling like a proud father as he watches the children grow through his secret financial sponsorship. Suddenly curious, Alan asks Evan how old those children are now, causing Evan to react with slight surprise at the question. Evan explains that most of the children Alan personally rescued are now old enough to leave the orphanage and enter society.
A sudden, sharp splash of color surrounds the 5 children as Evan reminds Alan that he was the one who saved them.
Alan watches a mental image of the children bowing respectfully, realizing that it might finally be time to let them go.
Evan is skeptical, asking if Alan didn't keep those sickly children close for a reason, but Alan says they have grown up well.
Narrated text explains that each game boss had specific traits, identifying Utia as having a legendary talent for faith.
Profiles for the other 4 bosses appear, listing Deis for swordsmanship, Ryan for research, Seolang for combat, and Redan for leadership.
Alan excitedly throws his paperwork into the air, certain that his plan to place each child in a strategic position is perfect. He decides that since he already planned on it, he will send each of them a special gift to mark their new beginnings. The golden light of sunset fades over the snowy manor as Alan finalizes his latest schemes to influence the future.
A sudden, sharp snort sounds as Evan wakes up from a nap while Alan celebrates his finished plan in the background.
Evan bids Alan farewell with a grin, while Alan hopes that his latest moves will eventually grant him some sort of bonus.
Ryan, Redan, Deis, and Seolang gather together, surprised that Alan has sent them each a set of individual orders for the first time.
Seolang cheers with excitement as they prepare to read their new tasks, though Ryan suggests they check their previous letters first.
A soft, quick rustle sounds as Utia studies her envelope, noting that Alan's new orders appear to require a very high level.
The group asks if they are permitted to read the letters now, and Utia confirms that Alan has finally decided they should see them.
Deis questions if the letter is truly an order, while Ryan observes that it appears to be nothing more than ordinary small talk.
Utia reveals that their benefactor intentionally disguised the official orders as casual conversations from the very beginning. She explains that Alan personally selected each of them, using the letters to designate targets, assign missions, and demand reports.
Deis realizes the secrecy is meant to prevent information leaks as Utia insists they must clearly understand and execute every mission.
Seolang questions why they use letters instead of magic communicators, but Utia reminds them their only duty is to follow orders. Observing her absolute devotion, Deis is struck by the chillingly steadfast trust Utia places in their mysterious patron. The group gathers in a dim storage room filled with wooden crates to finalize their plans before departing.
Deis is assigned to travel to the nation of knights Caliburn, while Seolang expresses her dislike for her mission to a desert colony.
Redan prepares to head to the entertainment city of Roxas as Ryan is tasked with investigating the maze city Larthania. Utia accepts her mission to the Holy Kingdom Rosario with a serene and confident expression. A mental command emphasizes that their specific roles and tasks are all clearly written within their individual letters. Each member recounts their unique goals, from Deis becoming a knight to Ryan locating the hidden gifts Alan provided. Utia issues a final, stern warning for none of them to ever mention the name of the Blue Moon. The 5 companions walk through the town square under a bright sky as they set off on their separate journeys. 3 months later, stacks of books and papers clutter a desk illuminated by a candelabra and bright morning light. A soft, tired breath sounds as Alan laments finding no information regarding the recent changes in magic and incantations.
Alan asks for an update on Leo's assassin, but Evan reports that the Information Guild has still found no leads.
Alan reflects on the growing butterfly effect he caused by saving the 5 children who were destined for darkness.
He considers Loria, who was supposed to die but instead became a duke and rapidly expanded her underworld influence. Fearing the danger of uncovering a deadly secret, Alan decides to halt all investigations into the mysterious assassin. He understands that in this world, ignorance is bliss, because very few things can escape the network of the Information Guild. Alan worries that if his attempts to take precautions lead to his own death, his efforts will have been meaningless. He believes that secret organizations will not harm him as long as he avoids meddling in their affairs. Evan informs Alan that Deis was recently appointed as a knight in Caliburn, prompting Alan to offer a polite congratulations.
Alan is stunned when Evan adds that Deis has already founded an entire knight order of his own.
He deduces that Deis must have reached at least an expert level of swordsmanship to achieve such a feat. Rumors circulate that the world will see its 5th Master Knight in less than 10 years due to Deis's talent. Alan feels a surge of pride while discussing the legendary swords of Caliburn with the eye patch-wearing Evan. The sun shines over the grand white stone architecture and manicured gardens of the noble estate. A year passes as Evan enters the study with urgent news while Alan is still adjusting to his duties as a count. Alan looks up in pure shock as he hears the latest, unbelievable update regarding one of the children. High-ranking swordmasters are described as superhumans who have mastered the Aura Blade and unlocked a unique ability called derivation. Evan clarifies that Deis is on the verge of becoming a swordmaster, though he has not yet created his own derivation.
Deis has already gained national recognition by winning a high-stakes duel against the kingdom's 4th-ranked sword.
Alan recalls that the nation of Caliburn has been at war with northern barbarians for more than a decade. Evan explains that realizing and moving mana typically takes 15 years, while achieving derivation takes several decades.
Legend says that the first sword Reinhardt became the youngest Master Knight in history at the age of 32.
A system notification highlights Reinhardt as a legendary warrior who has wielded his blade since the age of 5.
Alan is perplexed that even with unbelievable talent, it took a legend like Reinhardt over 20 years to reach that level.
He struggles to understand how a child who previously had no knowledge of swords has become a master knight so quickly.
In a moment of selfish humor, Alan wonders if he can benefit from Deis's immense power sooner than expected.
He notes with a hint of sadness that he still only receives regular letters from Utia.
Alan grumbles to Evan about how the children haven't sent him any direct correspondence or thanks for the gifts.
Each of Utia's letters contains detailed news about the lives and progress of the other deadly sins she grew up with.
Alan feels slightly slighted that the children he saved have never once reached out to thank him personally.
A sudden, sharp slap sounds as Alan strikes his own cheeks to refocus, feeling thankful they haven't destroyed the kingdom. Evan pats Alan on the shoulder as the two men look out the tall window at the vast escape grounds.
The sunset paints the sky over the capital of Caliburn, identifying it as the residence of high-ranking nobility.
A company of heavily armored knights marches through the city streets as the military remains on high alert.
A lone figure in dark armor stands silently in a grand hall, silhouetted against the purple light of the evening sky. Deis exhales, introduced as a master knight.
His purple-haired sister greets him toughtfully.
Deis waves back with a gentle smile.
Recalling the past year makes him embarrassed.
Darkness consumes everything he once held dear.
He watches helplessly as his sister vanishes.
Despair turns into an uncontrollable, burning rage. Crimson light flickers through the heavy shadows. Imprisoned and alone, he clings to hope.
He joins the Blue Moon for revenge.
Lethal training shapes him into a weapon.
He is confused by a sudden personal order.
He wonders what secrets this place holds.
He stares ahead with intense purple eyes.
He finds his sister working in secret.
The long-lost siblings share a tearful hug. She cries in disbelief at his return.
Sobbing, he holds her tightly at last.
They kneel together in their emotional reunion.
He asks what happened following their separation.
She looks at him with teary release.
They sit at a table together.
She describes being dragged away by enemies. Prisoners are held in a tall tower.
A mysterious figure performs a dark ritual.
Magical incantations begin to shape the air.
A chaotic power threatens to collapse everything.
Raw energy gradually gains a specific purpose. A brilliant, fleeting bloom of light erupts.
The boy channels a powerful magic skull.
A pillar of blue light pierces skyward.
He realizes the specific sequence of magical phrases is vital.
He notes that starting with collapse led to failure.
Shock washes over his face at their fault.
He notices onlookers watching his display.
Kalia recognizes the magic, while the dark-haired boy wonders about her presence.
The gray-haired man exclaims that such magic is only for the highest-tier mages. The boy is stunned to be compared to the highest levels of magic.
A king claims the boy's talent as a tip describes knightly orders.
A sudden, sharp roar sounds as the air is torn by a loud quah. His sister is torn away by shouts. Dark magic pulls her into the abyss.
A brave warrior fights the encroaching darkness.
He slashes through the shadows to save her.
A mercenary named Yeben rescued the Gaul.
She describes receiving continuous support in Masson.
A note from Alon Palatio guarantees their safety.
She expresses her profound gratitude for her benefactor.
He processes the weight of her words.
He wonders how his secret past was discovered.
The pale moon watches over her.
He finally understands the complex puzzle.
Deis reflects on Utia's unwavering role as a tool for their master, wondering if she ever thinks for herself.
He realizes his own naivete as he enters the room to find the sister he once thought was lost.
Looking at his companions, Deis realizes that Alan had foreseen everything and provided them with vital clues.
He sheds a tear, understanding that Alan intended to help the child left to survive alone.
His sister looks up in shock, her voice trembling as she recognizes him.
He comforts her with a head pat, acknowledging that their master showed mercy where others would not.
He stands ready for his pestiny.
They share a quiet, peaceful meal.
Her joy radiates in the sunlight.
Utia looks on with a grim resolve, confident that the reasons for her loyalty will eventually be clear.
The written order to become a knight confirms his path was deliberate, proving his devotion isn't blind faith.
His purple eyes glow with intensity. Knights stand guard under the moon.
An army prepares for a mission. The knights stand in formation as their leader declares the start of an expedition for the eclipse.
The magical sword pulses with power.
He raises the blade against darkness.
A company marches through frozen peeps.
Alan relaxes in the courtyard, musing about how much his charges have grown over the years.
A soft, quick rustle sounds as the wind turns pages.
Alan frantically scrambles to catch his papers as a sudden breeze scatters his research notes.
He vows to be more organized while reflecting on his intensive and messy research into magical phrases.
He analyzes the properties of refraction.
Alan demonstrates that refraction increases the area of effect of a completed magic spell.
His notes detail how repulsion alters the form and trajectory of a projectile mid-flight.
He explains that blue light acts as a powerful amplifier for simultaneous parallel magic.
Linear diffraction allows for critical penetration.
The application of these specialized phrases results in a devastating and precise critical hit.
Alan notes the strict limitations of these phrases, warning that a single mistake will cause the spell to fail.
He finds it enjoyable to rediscover forgotten concepts like the ancient phrases of Babylonia for his self-defense.
After 2 months of intense study, Alan prepares to test the results of his electrical magic experiments.
He prepares to channel magical energy.
By intentionally disrupting the center of a manosphere, he triggers a controlled and powerful electrical shock.
He considers the raw magic useless.
A stabilizing force creates a fixation. He combines the forces to compress the magical energy into a far more potent and concentrated form.
The scene shifts to the Palladio reception hour.
Loria remains tense, knowing that her visit to the estate has deep strategic importance.
She aims to confirm Alan's true intentions and use his power to deliver a blow to her enemies.
Alan evaluates the sinister influence over the estate and the strength of the organization protecting its inhabitants.
Loria is baffled to see her arrogant companion shaking with uncontrollable fear.
Despite his reputation as a powerful 5th-rank mage, Bianchel is reduced to a cowering, terrified mess.
Loria realizes something is horribly wrong as she feels the overwhelming terror radiating from the mage.
She wonders if the magic is ancient.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounds a shoe that's up. Alan enters the room and Loria sharply questions what business brings him to the Palacio estate.
He gazes at them with indifference. Alan takes a seat and offers a polite apology for the sudden visit as the negotiation begins.
Loria admits she got lost searching for Alan, who calmly accepts her excuse.
Alan makes it clear that the ability he used was not an origin. He wonders what rank his magic would even hold if he had to level it.
He explains that his magic serves no defensive or offensive purpose, being essentially functionless.
A floating thought suggests it is best for them to keep what they witnessed a secret.
Bianchel fearfully claims he saw nothing while Loria is baffled by his submissive tone.
A sudden, soft sigh sounds as Alan asks the real reason for their visit now that things are cleared up.
Loria insists they were just nearby to pay respects, though Alan remains unconvinced.
He tells her he has too much work to spare time for idle conversation.
Loria thanks him for the audience and prepares to take her leave. Alan suggests that she visit Duke Altia if she is looking for someone to speak with.
He stares with an intense gaze, implying he has a specific feeling about that meeting.
He notes they would likely get along well, which causes Loria to sweat in nervousness.
Loria curtsies politely, stating she might follow his advice and visit the Duke.
A sudden, sharp rattle sounds as the carriage begins its journey away from the manor.
Yaban and a guard discuss why the disgraced Zenonia family would come looking for them.
Chibi Alan panics at the thought of power-hungry people pestering him over his magic.
Yaban remarks that Zenonia would never approach their underworld rival, Altia. Alan tells him with a weary expression never to come to him alone again.
The carriage rolls past a scenic village as they discuss Count Palacio's magic.
Loria sits in the carriage, still questioning if the magic was truly a legendary origin.
Bianchel denies it while sweating profusely, recalling Loria's shock at his earlier reaction.
He explains that origins are absolute laws of magic granted only to the highest archmages. A sudden low hum sounds as he uses his observation eye to reveal the Count's true power.
He admits he activated his special sight to analyze the Count's magic during their talk. A dark, menacing version of the Count is silhouetted against a chaotic red energy. Bianchel recalls the terrifying sphere of magic that Alan manifested in the study.
He explains that the magic was simultaneously warping and collapsing laws while remaining stable.
He calls it an absurd miracle that defies all reason while Loria listens in silence. Intense energy glows in Bianchel's eyes as he describes the encounter. Blue magical arrays shatter like glass against a background of rising red shadows. A massive blood-red eye stares out from the center of the dark abyss.
The Count stands before a massive dark tree of energy that towers over everything.
Bianchel clutches his head in pain, realizing that seeking more knowledge is far too dangerous. He asserts his certainty as a researcher of forgotten and ancient magical eras.
A dire warning appears on a blood-spattered background advising against opposing the Count.
Loria agrees that discerning his intentions is pointless and decides to visit the Duke. Alan appears as a giant master of fate holding dice over models of the various houses.
Loria realizes with a cold sweat that she has already become one of his pawns.
A sudden, heavy step sounds as Yebin approaches Alan with new information.
Alan is stunned to hear that Zenonia and Altia have actually formed an alliance. He panics at the thought of a shadow alliance causing the kingdom's collapse.
He remembers his own words and realizes she followed his suggestion too perfectly.
A sudden, quick rustle sounds as Alan tries to calm his racing thoughts.
Yibon hands Alan a report while they both look concerned about the news. Alan writes a letter to Kalia, apologizing for his blunt and cold behavior. He instructs Yebin to deliver the message to Loria through the mercenary connections. A sudden soft sigh sounds as Alan wonders what Redan and Sialong are doing.
He worries about the safety of the children, fearing they might have died.
A system window describes a golden gauntlet and the fallen sinner of pride.
Alan considers the resources he provided for her survival.
The scene shifts to the desert nation. A lonely cave sits amidst the sands. A sudden, soft rustle sounds as she walks through the night. The Beast King girl cheers after her successful ordeal.
She offers thanks to the moon for her gift.
She realizes the tribal essence is no simple time. Her golden eyes burn with newfound purpose. She recalls the legend of the Golden Mane tribe. A gentle hand pats her head in remembrance.
She reflects on the tribe's ancient, legendary heirloom.
The heirloom grants immense power and divine authority. She endures a fierce trial within her inner world. Reality sets in as the golden power manifests. She remembers her dark past as a test subject. Painful memories of imprisonment and injury surface.
Her resolve hardens for the path ahead.
She vows to repay the kindness shown to her.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as she lands.
She realizes her destiny goes beyond the arena.
Her gaze sharpens with a singular burning goal.
She aims to become the strongest gladiator alive. A sudden, loud boom sounds as power explodes. A sudden, soft rustle sounds in the desert breeze.
She looks out over the vast, moonlit desert.
She turns away, ready to begin her journey. The tribe's glory shall rise after 5 centuries.
Alan suddenly remembers a piece of important information.
Yiban reports on the whereabouts of the children.
Alan is baffled by Xialong's new Golden Flash Arius.
Yeban shares uncertain news about Redan's current location. A land's intense glare makes Yiban visibly nervous. A sudden, sharp rattle sounds at Alan's travel plans. They discuss traveling to the distant blue magic power. Yeban leaves to begin the necessary travel preparations. Alan collapses in exhaustion at the thought of travel. He reminisces about his memories of Labyrinth City. He recalls the depths of the famous grinding map. Valuable artifacts and relics fill the labyrinth steps. Renee prepares for her upcoming magic appraiser exam. Alan worries her appraisal gift was insufficient. The scene shifts to the mercenary city, Lurthania.
A secret shop hides in the southern district.
The shop quietly caters to the city's elite. A lord receives word that his appraisal is finished.
The masked appraiser presents a mana-ignited device.
The relic glows, revealing its powerful imprinted ability. The customer laughs, delighted by the improved efficiency. A sudden, soft chime sounds as the door closes. Renee removes her mask with a solemn expression. Renee stands startled in her shop as a sudden, sharp light flashes. A sudden, low creak sounds as the green-haired girl exits through the door.
A sudden, soft hum sounds from the mana-ignited device on the pedestal.
Renee smiles, recalling when she was first told to become an appraiser. She understands Alan's true identity as a friend of Palin from an ancient era. Renee wonders how becoming an appraiser helps in eliminating the mysterious black things. She enters a dark room where a chained, glowing relic sits upon a pedestal. The eye of the stalker rapidly identifies items below a specific mana threshold. Rin senses the relic's substance is unique as a sudden, sharp snap sounds. Golden chains shatter as the powerful eye artifact begins to react. Renee declares that she must awaken this item to fight the black things. A sudden low whir sounds as energy beams from the artifact into her tool. Renee notes she still requires hundreds of sacrifices to fully awaken the power. The device only accepts high-tier relics, and any mistake resets the entire process. A sudden, soft rustle sounds as she hugs the artifact, claiming her unique destiny. She vows to kill the Black Wolf according to the Great Moon's will. A sudden, sharp rattle sounds as the carriage arrives at the Blue Magic Tower. Fenya Christine, the Vice Tower Master, demands they state their business and leave.
Alan and Yevon face the busy blue-haired mage who demands they hurry up.
Alan recalls she was a once-in-a-lifetime genius who reached the 8th circle at 20.
The Blue Magic Tower holds immense status and monopolizes the production of essential goods.
Alan introduces himself as Count Palladio while sweating at the mage's intense attitude. Alan mentions the time gate while Fenya frantically searches through her cluttered desk. Fenya stops her search in shock as Alan claims he can eliminate the gate. The time gate is a crock to a subspace that creates destructive anomalies. A sudden, sharp tsk sounds as Fenya mocks Alan's lowly magical talent.
She dismissively tells them to leave, ignoring Alan's attempt to get an answer.
A sudden, soft sigh sounds as Fenya mocks his claim to the gate's treasure.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as she slams the table, questioning his audacity. She accuses him of seeking a stunt to fix his reputation as a lucky heir.
A sudden, sharp crackle sounds as she warns them against causing a ruckus. Alan notes that despite her workload, she is surprisingly well informed about outside rumors. Fenia's mana flares intensely, filling the room with a cold blue light.
A sudden, low whisper sounds as Yevon warns that she is incredibly dangerous.
Alan bets his entire property on his success as Fenya calls him a fool. Alan offers to make an oath for just a little of her time. Fenya stares back with a cold and silent gaze. They reach the heavy vault as Fenya promises to take his wealth if he fails. A sudden, sharp click sounds as the door opens and Fenya evaluates his competence. After listening to him, she is convinced Alan is merely an incompetent, lucky man. She finds his second circle magical talent pathetic compared to his inhumane atmosphere.
Research shows the gate disappears naturally after 3 months, making his offer seem pointless.
Alan stands before a massive crack in the floor, emitting pillars of blue light.
Fenya tells him to leave if he cannot perform as Alan prepares himself.
Fenya is shocked to see him use his hand as a primal magic medium.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as she prepares to order him to leave. A sudden massive boom sounds as the entire room begins to fracture.
Fenya is gripped by terror as she realizes she cannot move her body.
A sudden low hum sounds as she realizes everything in the room has stopped.
A sudden heavy thud sounds as a giant red eye opens in the abyss.
Alan stands silhouetted against a chaotic swirl of red energy.
A massive, blood-red eye pulses with an intense, terrifying power.
Fenya gazes into the crushing red abyss as energy crackles around her.
Her face pales in sheer terror as she realizes that everything around her has stopped.
A sudden sharp ring sounds as a blue magical array activates within her eye.
Complex blueprints appear, declaring that something unknown is seeing through its essence.
Shifting magical gears attempt to decode a truth that is described as simple.
Fenya trembles as she is warned to cut off her dangerous thoughts or face ruin like a poisoned chalice.
A giant red phantom hand reaches out from the dark center of the abyss. The ethereal red fingers loom over Fenya as she recoils in absolute terror.
Looking at Alan's cold back, Fenya pales and thinks that she understands his silent demand.
The massive red eye in the abyss slowly blinks shut as the pressure peaks.
The red energy dissipates as Fenya's vision clears and her eye returns to normal.
A massive blue ritual circle glows brilliantly on the ceiling of the Grand Hall. Fenya stands visibly shaken while Alan remains perfectly composed in the quiet room.
Alan handles a black bracelet and states that he can do this easily with special items and methods, specifically the relic Sharon provided.
Alan wonders if his convincing spell worked while Fenya remains frozen in shock behind him.
Fenya stammers that she won't tell anyone, while Alan suspiciously notes her expression and wonders if his bluff failed.
Fenya frantically promises to keep the secret and remain silent while Alan walks away.
Alan looks confused by her sudden, intense change in behavior.
A sudden, heavy step sounds as Alan tells Yubin it is time to leave, but Fenya begs them to wait.
Fenya presents a case of blue mana recovery potions she made and pleads with Alan to take them.
Alan is stunned to receive top-grade, handcrafted potions from the Vice Tower Lord herself.
Fenya asks if he likes them while Alan recalls the astronomical price and almost chokes at the thought.
Fenya insists she will keep silent about the Count's request, while Alan wonders if she is just over-thankful for closing the gate.
Fenya dizzily offers to make a formal mana oath as Alan is baffled by her extreme reaction to a mere secret.
Alan realizes she is clearly misunderstanding the situation, but remains silent.
A sudden low hum sounds as a blue magical circle erupts on the floor between them. Magical blue chains manifest, binding the two together in a solemn, unbreakable oath.
Fenya cheers that she keeps her promises well, while Alan laments that she shows no sign of clearing up the misunderstanding.
Inside the carriage, Yibin asks if the primitive-looking artifact is the gate's treasure and if its performance is good.
Alan examines the bracelet and asserts that it is something he absolutely needs for his plans.
He is relieved to have secured the Seal of the Unholy One, a gem that absorbs and stores atmospheric mana.
A sudden soft hum sounds from the bracelet as Alan notes its capacity is more than enough for his mana hole.
Alan sighs at having a body with less mana than a support item, but reminds himself his goal is research, not fighting.
Alan settles into his seat with a nod while Yeban watches him in silence.
Fenya bows repeatedly and tells them to go in, while Alan finds her sudden politeness very strange.
Alan clarifies he is only a second circle wizard, and Fenya enthusiastically agrees, making him wonder if she is mocking him.
Alan feels uneasy recalling a similar reaction from Kalia and the Duke in the past. He decides it is fine since he likely won't see any of them ever again.
They enjoy the peaceful weather as the journey continues through the bright afternoon. The carriage rolls smoothly across the lush green countryside.
They arrive at the grand mountain estate belonging to Duke Altia.
Zenonia is greeted and offered a comfortable stay as she sits with Tiu.
Altia smiles, holding her cup and saying she is mostly just happy to see Zenonia. They agree that avoiding talk of class is convenient and praise Count Palacio's astonishing foresight once again.
Altia reflects on following his advice and quickly understanding his true intention.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as the two women stroll through the moonlit garden while chatting.
They acknowledge that their alliance was built entirely on Count Palladio's command, regardless of the reason.
Alan stands silhouetted before a massive house crest featuring a wide eye above a golden chalice.
The alliance between Zenonia and Octiana settles into place as political rivalries fade.
Altia questions Zenonia's early visit, only to learn that Alan used a letter as an excuse.
Zenonia carefully examines the letter sent by the Count.
Zenonia suspects a hidden scheme within what appears to be a standard apology letter. Altia agrees that they should discuss the potential motives behind his message. Zenonia points out that the letter mentions nobles from opposing political factions. She notes the specific affiliations of the various nobles Alan interacted with at the ball.
The two women realize that Alan seems to hold no allegiance to any established faction.
A chilling thought arises regarding the total elimination of the current social order.
They decide to reach a conclusion based on a more logical interpretation of his actions.
They conclude that Alan's ultimate goal is to dismantle the nobility and establish a new regime.
Zenonia reflects on how her reputation was leveraged to elevate her to the rank of Duke.
Altia is certain of success given the powerful support Alan has already secured.
The two allies sit in a sunlit parlor, contemplating their place in the coming changes.
At the Blue Magic Tower, the Tower Lord ponders the rumors surrounding Count Palladio's nature.
Salai Micardo demands a detailed report from a visibly drained Finia. Fenia's typical arrogance has been replaced by a state of absolute traumatized humility.
A sudden, sharp cough sounds as Alan chokes on a sweet potato during a campfire break.
Alan accepts water from Yaban, finding the simple meal surprisingly delicious despite the mishap. The two men rest by the fire as the sun sets over the horizon.
A sudden heavy chime sounds from the tower as night falls and a mysterious figure walks.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Sharon smiles, looking down with a predatory gaze.
The white-haired nun stands in a field of lilies, her crimson eyes gleaming with secret intent. A guide explains that the insight eye is an elite trait typically awakened at the 6th circle.
The majestic Blue Magic Tower stands tall against a clear morning sky.
Salam notes with surprise that the presence of the time gate has vanished entirely. He finds Fenia slumped at her desk, having dutifully completed all her assigned tasks. Salam becomes worried by her lack of temper, finding her sudden compliance very strange. He recalls how her immense talent previously made her unbearably arrogant and dismissive. She was known for making new recruits cry, having done so dozens of times.
Salam previously believed she would only learn modesty upon reaching the 7th circle of magic.
He tries to be comforting, wondering if the workload during his absence was too much for her.
Fenia remains in a daze, her pride completely shattered by her encounter with Alan.
Potions sit on a shelf as the tower confirms that the Count indeed closed the gate.
Salam is intrigued that an oath prevents Fenia from explaining how the gate was closed.
Fenia remains vague, asserting that there are no further details she can share. Salim is delighted that she was humbled by what he assumes is incomprehensible origin magic. The Tower Lord develops a keen interest in the mysterious Count Palladio of the Asteria Kingdom.
A sudden, massive boom sounds as the ground beneath the practice area fractures violently.
Alan is satisfied with his research progress, enabled by his increased mana capacity. He meticulously documents new rules for arranging magical phrases to avoid failure. A sudden, sharp tisk sounds as Alan ponders the complexities of phrase positioning. Yiben observes that Alan's magical power seems to grow exponentially with every demonstration.
He notes that Alan's current output far exceeds the standards of a typical 2nd circle mage.
Alan examines a massive crater, noting that basic gravity magic should not have such force. He questions if his rapid growth is real or merely an illusion of his current condition. His proficiency increases daily, moving from clumsy attempts to intricate magical precision. He successfully uses a refined trigger word to ignite a lamp with perfect efficiency. Alan charts his findings, discovering how fine-tuning arrangements yields gradual power increases.
Alan remains skeptical of his own power as Yeban arrives with a letter from Utia.
Yiben asks if Alan is going back inside, and Alan explains he has reached his magic limit for the day.
Alan ponders the sudden increase in his magical power, wondering if it is a compensatory reward for a curse.
He considers the nature of Eastern curse rituals, but concludes it is unlikely since no one from the East is near.
As they walk through the corridor, Alan considers if he is receiving divine faith.
He quickly dismisses the idea as illogical for account of a small, ignored kingdom. Alan decides to put the mystery aside and move forward, hoping no negative consequences arise. The scene transitions to the moonlit capital of Rienal within the Holy Kingdom of Rosario. It is the white city of Chironia, where the people worship the goddess of the moon and peace. A man in silver armor approaches a woman in white robes within the East Prayer House. The armored man greets the white-haired woman as Sisker. The woman, Utia, returns the greeting to Sir Loke and asks after his well-being. Loke observes that she holds a low rank and lacks the formal sash of holy grace. Despite her rank, Loke bows and reports that they saved many lives and children from the local villages.
Utia smiles, telling him that he is the one who truly performed the good deeds.
Loke insists he is forever grateful to her for teaching him when he was ignorant and lost. Sir Loke looks ahead with a somber expression as he reflects on his past. He recalls spending 20 years in despair because he could not feel any divine power.
A sudden sharp ring sounds as a sword clatters onto the training ground.
Loke sits defeated on the ground until Utia approaches him in the moonlight. She encourages him to try having faith in the moon if there is something he desires. Utia promises that he will understand the truth once he actually follows her advice. A sudden, powerful whoosh sounds as Loke miraculously manifests divine power through his sword. Loke recalls his joy but admits he felt guilty for choosing faith in the moon over goddess Chironia.
He lived with the constant fear that he had stepped onto a path of heresy.
However, the holy artifacts in his hands continued to shine, proving his divine power was real.
In the present, Lok asks Utia why she specifically told him to believe in the moon.
Utia explains that while faith is invisible, it is easier to draw strength from something that physically exists.
Utia gazes toward the night sky, mentioning the moon with a knowing smile.
She promises that the moon will always be there to guide and stay with him. Lok realizes her intent, understanding that the goddess is fundamentally linked to the moon itself.
Utia confirms this is a way to help doubtful humans find absolute certainty in their beliefs.
Lok bows deeply in gratitude, thanking her from the bottom of his heart for her guidance.
Utia invites him to join her in prayer as a way to express his gratitude.
Utia states that she is happy to pray with him repeatedly as long as he desires it.
Sir Lok places his hand over his heart in a respectful salute.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Utia smiles, her crimson eyes gleaming with a secret intent.
A sudden heavy creak sounds as the massive doors to the chapel slowly swing open.
A sudden quick tap sounds as Utia's boots click against the stone floor of the aisle.
The interior of the chapel is bathed in a soft purple light as devotees wait in the pews.
Utia stands before the altar and calls for the congregation to begin their prayer.
The massive full moon hangs over the spire of the temple in the clear night.
Utia Blutia is revealed as a sister of the Holy Kingdom Rosario, praying fervently to the great moon.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Redan checks the mailbox, noting a letter has arrived. Alan sits at his desk in his study, looking exhausted by his recent efforts. He sighs while reading the letter, noting that it contains nothing but mundane details of daily life.
Alan laments that only Utia writes to him, while the others he helped remain silent.
He reasons that since he is a complete stranger to them, it makes sense they would view him as just a nice man.
Alan reminds himself that his mission was simply to guide them away from destroying the world.
He notes that despite her heavy workload, Utia is the only one who writes to him regularly.
Alan sheds a tear while joking that only his eldest child acknowledges his hard work, insisting he is fine.
Alan is startled at his desk when Yebin suddenly approaches and asks if he is busy.
Yebin reports that he has received urgent information regarding the children from the Information Guild.
Alan reacts with absolute shock when Reborn informs him that one of the boys has become a pirate.
As Alan asks for more details, he envisions Redan happily announcing his new life of piracy.
Sitting in the parlor, Reborn explains that there are many rumors surrounding Solrang and Deis.
Solrang stands triumphantly over a fallen foe, having achieved a massive winning streak toward her new title.
Alan notes with concern that she is catching up to the record held by the legendary Lion King.
A vision of the Lion King appears, depicting a massive white-haired warrior battling a colossal sea serpent. Alan reflects on the military strength of the colony, worried that Solrang is destined to surpass everyone there.
Yebin continues the report, noting that Deis' order has already executed a prominent barbarian chief.
In the snowy distance, Deis stands beside a flag bearing the emblem of the moon.
Yebin explains that the group Deis leads is known for rituals that allow them to transform into monsters. Alan recalls the intense battles he faced in the game against the barbarians and their god, Ultorus.
Alan is relieved that he won't encounter that god yet, while Reborn notes Deis is now a master swordsman.
After learning Renee successfully opened a mystical appraisal shop, Alan feels she is doing well on her own.
Alan returns to his greatest concern, desperately asking for confirmation on whether Redan truly became a pirate.
Yebin mentions the 7 archipelagos, a region near the coast of Roxas where powerful pirates reside.
Alan falls to the ground in despair upon learning Redan is now the captain of the largest pirate island.
He laments that his goal for Redan to live a proud, average life has been completely upended by reality. Redan's natural talent for finding enemies is highlighted as he dives deep into the sparkling ocean waters.
As a sea godkin, Redan easily navigates the depths to salvage precious relics from the seafloor.
Alan is speechless as Yebin explains that Redan has effectively become a lord among the pirate nations. Alan struggles to understand how someone as young as Redan could have possibly defeated a superhuman captain. He wonders if Redan leveraged the powerful gems he salvaged to secure his high-ranking position. Alan remembers the grueling hours he spent playing the treasure-hunting minigame just to obtain similar artifacts.
Feeling like a weary father, Alan slumps in his chair while Reborn asks if he is feeling all right. The scene shifts to the coastal horizon of Roxas, a massive maritime city within the Principality of Korkia.
Beyond the busy coast lie the tropical islands known collectively as the 7 Paradises of Pirates. The sprawling city of Roxas is revealed, bustling with ships and architecture overlooking the bright blue sea.
On a wooden floor, the shattered remains of a famous pirate captain's sword serve as a grim trophy.
A sudden heavy thud sounds as a black boot lands firmly on the stone ledge of a tall building.
Redan is revealed in his new role, standing tall as the formidable captain of the first archipelago.
Redan looks off into the distance with a neutral expression, letting out a soft hum of contemplation.
Sitting alone on a high rooftop overlooking the city, Redan admits to himself that he is feeling lost.
He gazes at the sky, wondering about the true nature of the great moon mentioned in his orders.
Redan reflects on his past, acknowledging that he was initially just grateful to the man who helped him.
He remembers being a slave destined for death before his hidden abilities were finally awakened. He notes that his previous work felt more like following Utia's lead until he received a direct command.
Under the light of the full moon, Redan examines a handwritten letter containing orders he finds incomprehensible.
He questions the logic behind becoming a treasure hunter, feeling a deep sense of internal conflict.
Redan's expression hardens as he resolves to begin his quest for revenge as quickly as possible.
He recalls a distant time of peace when his family lived happily on a hidden, beautiful island.
That peace was shattered when shadowy hands descended upon their home, bringing destruction and fear.
Redan is haunted by the memory of hunters slaughtering his parents after they had barely managed to escape.
The trauma continues as he remembers being captured and sold into a life of brutal slavery.
The young boy stares in horror, his life changed forever by the violence he witnessed that day.
In the present, Redan stands on a grassy cliff at dusk, looking out over the water toward a distant city.
He decides that for now he will at least make it appear as though he is following his current orders.
Fireworks suddenly illuminate the night sky above a ship, drawing Redan's attention to the noisy celebration.
Redan notices a wall of wanted posters, including his own, as he prepares for whatever comes next.
The pirate ship comes alive at night with celebration and drinking as glowing lanterns drift through the salt air.
A scarred pirate captain boasts to his crew that only the chosen can receive the Heavenly King's protection through their wealth.
Redan's eyes burn with a cold blue light as he reflects on finally discovering the people responsible for his parents' deaths.
He realizes that the title of Heavenly King is nothing more than a web of lies woven for a deceptive purpose. The grim reality of the pirate's power is revealed, showing a sacred ritual that requires using parts of a sea godkin's body.
Through this horrific process, a person can forcibly receive the divine power granted by the sea god Clead.
A colossal, ethereal manifestation of the sea god looms over the devotees as they offer up the stolen blue gems.
The water below the worshippers turns a dark, bloody red as the true cost of the ritual is made clear.
A sudden loud bang sounds as fireworks illuminate falling wanted posters, celebrating the captains who wield this stolen strength.
Redan's face is cast in deep shadow as he seethes with hatred for the hunters who destroyed his past.
He recounts the unthinkable cruelty of the hunters who desecrated his parents' bodies by splitting them into 7 pieces.
His reflection shimmers and distorts in the dark water, mirroring the deep, swirling turmoil of his vengeful spirit.
The scene fades into a brilliant blue light as the weight of his tragic history settles over the quiet ocean.